Welcome everybody to this video presentation of mine, the final Jubilee from Canaan. People are talking about the Jubilee years, but we have to take it from when they entered the land of Canaan. And it doesn't start back at Genesis 1:1. So we can actually calculate the time. If we can find one Jubilee from the Bible, we can calculate the time the Israelites entered the land. So the first step is finding a Jubilee year. We find that in Ezekiel 40, verse 1. And in the 25th year of our captivity, in the beginning of the year, underline that, in the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year, after that the city was smitten, in the selfsame day, the hand of the Lord was upon me. So Ezekiel is pointing out a Jubilee. We can tell that by this simple statement, the beginning of the year in the 10th day. Because the beginning of the year would be the first of the month, right? But here it's the 10th. How can the first be the 10th? So he's talking about the beginning of the Jubilee year. And this is pretty clear that this is a Jubilee, but I'll prove that a little more as we go along. In Ezekiel 1:1, we have this interesting thing that we have this 30-year Jubilee cycle. He says, now it came to pass in the 30th year. Notice here, though, he doesn't say 30th year of what, because he's talking about the Jubilee cycle. In the 4th month and the 5th day, as I was among the captives by the river Sheba, that the heavens were open. And then we see in a couple verses, in the 5th day of the month, which is the 5th year of King Jehoiachin's captivity. We know that date because the captivity was in 597, so that's the first year of Jehoiachin's captivity, and so the 5th year would be 592. So we'll remember this as we go on. Next thing, Jubilees are counted from the 50th year, and this is a mistake a lot of people make because they count it as 49. But this is a bad mistake because this is the reason God basically had the Israelites 70 years in captivity. It has to do with Jubilees. And here we see in Leviticus 25, he says, thou shalt cause the trumpet of Jubilee to sound on the 10th day in the 7th month, on the Day of Atonement. And you shall hallow the 50th year and proclaim throughout all the land, all the inhabitants thereof, and it shall be a Jubilee unto you. It goes on and on. And you shall have the 50th year as a Jubilee. And there you'll not sow, you'll not reap, and on and on. So what the Israelites had done is, the 49th year, we call that a Shemitah. It's every 7 years they'd have a Sabbath year. But on a Jubilee, they'd also have the Sabbath year, a rest year on the 50th. So there would be 2 in a row. Now, unfortunately, people didn't like that. So the only time you'd plant was in the 48th year, in the fall, because in Israel they plant in the fall. That's when they get they call them the early rains. So then you couldn't plant on the 49th year or the 50th, and that year had to go all the way around, so almost like the 51st year before you could plant again in the fall. So they didn't like that, so what they did, they just combined these 2. And so you only had 1. So they just basically got rid of 1 of them and said this 49th year, we'll count that as the Jubilee. But God, doesn't like people doing that. So for every time they did that, he just counted them up. And even if they did it a few times, but wherever you look, whenever you have anybody, even Jewish background stuff, they're always 49, 49, 49. Still haven't learned. So we can calculate a Jubilee year from Ezekiel 40, verse 1. Here's how we do it. In the 25th year of our captivity, we know the captivity was 597, 25th year, that would make it 572 when Ezekiel has this vision. And on the 14th year, the city was smitten, the city of Jerusalem. Well, that was in 586, the 14th year. Minus 14 is 572 again. In the beginning of the year, like I said, that's Rosh Hashanah. It's talking about the beginning of the Jubilee year. In the 10th day of the month, well, so that must be the Day of Atonement. And it's the beginning of the year of Jubilee, according to Leviticus 25. And one other point, Ezekiel 1:1 says it was the 30th year of the Jubilee cycle. So that was 592. And 592 minus 20 years, because 30 had already gone, you come with 572. So therefore 572 is a Jubilee, according to Ezekiel 41. He's the priest. They kept track of them. So now that we have a Jubilee year, we can start calculating. We can start counting 50 years, not 49, which is the mistake the Jews made and why they had to go into captivity for 70 years. You see, 1 year per Jubilee, I think. So God counted the whole thing, 70 Jubilees. So, for instance, here we can look at some other scripture that talks about a Jubilee year, like the time of Josiah. People think that was a Jubilee year. He reigned 31 years in Jerusalem, but on the 18th year of his reign, they found this book of the law in the temple, and they all realized, yikes, we haven't been doing all this. So they had a big reform. It was Josiah's reform. He began to reign in 640 BC, and the 18th year of his reign then was 622. Take 622 minus 50 years, another Jubilee, just like we said, 572. So, confirms this year. Next fact is that Israel was in captivity 70 years. Like I said, one per, for every Jubilee. Okay, so let's look at that. 2 Chronicles. And he took all the survivors of Babylonia, where they served him and his descendants as slaves until the rise of the Persian Empire, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, that the land should enjoy her sabbaths. See, he's talking about those Jubilee sabbaths. And as long as she lay desolate, she kept her sabbaths for 70 years. So, I know that, they started this 49 business instead of 49 and 50, they went to the just 49 because they didn't want to take that extra year. So they just called this the Jubilee. God doesn't like you fooling around with his word. And so every time they did that, God said, guess what? You're going to do that the whole time. So I'm going to count the whole period from the time you entered the land until the Jubilee is fulfilled. I'm going to count those as 70 years, that whole time. And so this is why we're going to look at this. So that makes actually 70 Jubilees of years, 70 years of Jubilees. Now here's an interesting thing. You think, oh no, that can't be. It all happened in 539 when the 70 years were completed. Except here, look at this verse in Jeremiah 25:12. But when the 70 years have elapsed, I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation and the land of the Chaldeans for their guilt, the oracle of the Lord, says the Lord. Their land I will turn into an everlasting waste. And this didn't happen because the land of Babylon carried on. In fact, there was no great devastation. It just became part of the Persian Empire. And even in Jesus' day, the city of Babylon was, carrying on as a productive place. There was even churches in Babylon. So this is this fulfillment is way in the future. It's at the end times when he will judge Babylon. And that's Revelation 18. So here it says, Jeremiah, and I will bring upon that land of Babylon all my words which I have pronounced against it, even all that's written in the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah 50 and 51. That talks about the future Babylon. So the fulfillment of Babylon's destruction in Revelation 18. Here it is predicted. For lo, I will raise up and cause to come up against Babylon, assembly of great nations from the land of the north. And they shall be themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrows will also be as a mighty expert man, and none will return in vain. These aren't just arrows. These are, those kind of arrows. Therefore, the desert creatures will live along there with the jackals. The ostrich will also live in it. And it will never again be inhabited or dwelt in from generation to generation. This wasn't fulfilled in 539 because people lived in it. So it is after the 70 years, 70 Jubilees. And I'll show you how that works. So here, why 70 years? Because 1 year for every Jubilee, every 50. Because that's what they did, right? They took 49 and just made it into one. They made that the 50th year. So every Jubilee, they took one away. One away. So God figured the whole time, from the time they entered the land, all the way till the fulfillment of the Jubilee, the final Jubilee. And so he multiplied 50 times 7. And you get 3,500 years. So the final Jubilee, we can go backwards, and we'll do that and show you when they could have entered the land. Therefore, this must be the first time they entered the land of Canaan. This is counting 70 Jubilees from the time they entered Canaan until the final one. So you have to work backwards. And here, Leviticus 25 says, when you come into the land, which I am giving you, then the land shall have a Sabbath to the Lord. See, they did right from the start. They were on the 49 thing, and so God, maybe the odd time they changed it around. Maybe the day, when Josiah figured it out, maybe they kept the 50th. I don't know, but anytime you talk to any Jewish sources, it's always 49. So I suspect God said, you can quibble. I'm just going to take the whole thing and just let you sit there for 70 years because of those Sabbaths. I mean, he did it for a lot of other reasons too. So let's go forward on Jubilees. Here we found a Jubilee year, right? We know it's around 572 according to Ezekiel 40 verse 1. So we can work ahead to the time of Christ. Adding 50, 50, 50. So from 572 until 22 BC is 11 Jubilees. From 22 to 29 AD is 50 years. That's another Jubilee, the 12th, from 572. Now we can add 40 Jubilees from 29 AD, and we come up with 2029. And then we can work backwards, 3,500 years backwards, to 70, times 50. And we get this year as a possible year the Israelites entered the land. So God was looking at the whole thing when he made them sit out 70 years. Why do we know that? Because he says on that, I'm going to deal with Babylon then. And I'm going to make its land a perpetual waste. So we don't know who Babylon is, except we see in Revelation 18 that Babylon is burnt by fire, and it will be a perpetual waste. So that's why we know these 70 years aren't just 70 literal years. There's a double fulfillment. God does that many times. So calculating the arrival, from the time they entered, I believe, Canaan, around 1472, and, and looking forward, 70 times 50 Jubilees, one every time. They just did 49, not the 50th. So we counted that whole period and let them sit 70 years. And in Babylon. So, we can see then, and guess what? The fall of Babylon is after that time, just like he said in Jeremiah 25:12. After the final, after the 70 years, then I'm going to destroy Babylon. just like he says in Jeremiah, 15:51. So read that and you'll see it. So I hope you enjoyed this video presentation of mine, and keep looking up, keep on the alert. God bless you.